Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, Manny here. Welcome back to another video. It is a cloudy afternoon, rest day afternoon here in Vienna, and the work ethic is high, so I thought it's time to get another video done. I hope you're having a great time yourself as well. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night, whenever you're watching this. For this little talk episode here, I picked the topic of how can we prepare ideally for a upcoming rock climbing trip. You know, what can we plan? How is the strategy? What should the strategy look like in order to make the most out of this upcoming rock climbing trip? And the reason why I picked this topic is because I've gotten an unusual number of requests regarding this matter recently. And the reason why this is the case, I believe, is that I myself just recently came back from a prolonged rock climbing trip. For those who are very new to the channel, you might not know that I was in Siurana, Spain, roughly. I came back, I think, 1 month ago, and I was there for 1.5 months. So I started in at the beginning of February, and to the mid of March I was there rock climbing, basically almost only rope climbing actually. So yeah, I also made a little bit of a trip analysis summary video. In case you're interested in that, you can check it out here. Hopefully it pops up there. But anyway, I think in order to even talk about this topic, we need to distinguish two different things here. And one is the first thing is the trip preparation in terms of training. So getting your body, your climber's body, ready for the impacts that gonna occur during the trip, you know, making it ready to be physically fit simply. So what should the training look like? And secondly, we need to take a look at strategy. And with strategy and planning, I mean all the things like what should the rest day, climbing day ratio look like? What projects should you pick? How many targets should you pick? How much time do you have in total? All these kind of things, you know. So we're gonna get into both. I'm gonna try to scratch the surface on both. By the way, if you're having experiences and opinions about this topic as well, then please feel free to share them down below. I'm sure other people would love to hear from them as well, and I would certainly do. I do certainly, I should say. So before I start, I also want to add that this is kind of a geeky subject, you know. I mean, let's face it, not everybody is so in the try hard mode that he plans exactly ahead what the trip should look like and stuff like that, you know. I mean, I can very well understand that as a beginner, you just want to go there and have some fun with your friends, check out the amazing nature, scenery. You just have fun with it, you know, just have fun with outdoor climbing, and that's completely understandable. In fact, if you're a beginner, my advice would be very simple. Just try to get as much meters in as possible, as much diverse meters in as possible, along all kinds of terrains, all kinds of grades that you are able to acquire already, and try to get as much success events in as possible, having as much fun as possible, basically. That's gonna give you at the same time also a lot of motivation to train for the next trip and stuff like that, you know. And it's gonna at the same time let you progress really fast, because as a beginner, as I've said already countless times, it's very important to get the diversity in, to get the body accustomed to this sport, really. So that's that. But for all those who are a bit longer in the game, maybe it's already your third or already your fourth rock climbing trip, and you already know that when you're on a climbing trip, then there is this very special energy. You're surrounded by lots of like-minded people who are sieging the rock with you, who are trying to accomplish some certain successes with you. And this is really a great opportunity to let very special events happen, to send a limit project, or to maybe even increase one's max grade, or, you know, all kinds of different successes you can have. Lead your first route, you know, get for the first time clipping quick draws, you know, not making a top rope, but you know, getting rid of your fear of falling and stepping out of your fear of falling and getting on lead climbing. All kinds of different successes can happen if you're surrounded by like-minded people and there is this special energy. So what I want to say is, sometimes if you're a little bit more advanced climber, you're aware of the fact that a rock climbing trip can be a very special setting, and you don't want to waste it. You actually want to make the most out of it. Also, something that is very important for a lot of people, a rock climbing trip mostly doesn't last forever. It's a very limited time frame that we have. Most people are very lucky if they can get 1 month off work or something and travel somewhere and concentrate on climbing only on climbing basically for 1 month. So you want to make sure, of course, if this happens once a year or even only once every 2 years, that you want to make the most out of it. And for these people, I have some advices here. Now, let's start with the training. How can we prepare our body physically for a rock climbing trip? And I think here we have to distinguish, of course, between two different things. First of all, we've got bouldering trips, and secondly, we have route climbing trips. Now, I will start with what I think is the simpler thing, and that is the bouldering trip. Now, most people train in bouldering gyms already anyway, so there is not really a lot of things to do here. I mean, of course there is. The first tip that I have for you: in the month prior to the trip, to the actual trip, try to get in as many outdoor bouldering days as already, you know. Don't assume that just because you're training bouldering indoors all the time, you're gonna be super fit once you're stepping outdoors in the trip and everything is gonna feel super easy because, you know, in the gym you could crank down these edges so easily already and you're super strong now. You need a little bit of experience of outdoor bouldering already. On outdoor boulders, there is something like a fear of falling as well, you know. Not all ground surface, I should say, is very friendly to you. Sometimes there are rocks sticking out, and you gotta have some experience with pad placement and stuff like that. You've gotta have some experience with spotting. You should have already some kind of dedicated climbing partners, spotting partners, bouldering partners with whom you go on the trip ideally. You know, getting into the rhythm, getting into the routine of spotting each other and, you know, placing the pads. All this is gonna reduce your respect, your great respect from boulders dramatically, and will enable hard ascents, of course. But this experience you can only gain when you also step outside for some time. Now, that's why I would very highly recommend, if you're already living in an area where there is some kind of outdoor bouldering around, step in the outdoors at least once a week or something and get back into the outdoor bouldering routine, and supplement the whole thing with things that you can only do indoors, which is of course the campus board, the hangboard, various core exercises with the rings and the parallettes, for example. Now, another thing, it's after my personal experience, outdoor bouldering, hard outdoor bouldering means mostly cranking down very, very small holds with big distances and quite a lot of heel and toe hooks and stuff like that, and body strength. So these are the things to focus on, you know. You don't want to waste time basically on super slabby problems or run jump starts or super futuristic double dyno, triple dyno things, you know. This stuff exists outdoors as well, but it's, to put it mildly, it's extremely rare, so don't waste a lot of time on that. Except, for example, when you know you're going to font, you might need some slab stepping skills, for example, or some dyno skills, and especially slopers and stuff. So think about the area where you want to head and adjust your training accordingly. You know, when there is a lot of crimps, then train a lot on crimps. And when you're hitting the campus board, don't campus on big slopers or stuff like that. Campus on the small edges, you know, try to do big distances on small edges. Of course, if you're not a bloody beginner, because then you're gonna wreck your fingers. But you know what I want to say here. Try to adjust your training, also the training that you can only do indoors, which is core, campus board, hangboard, to the area where you want to go during the trip. And get this occasional outdoor bouldering session in to get back into the routine of outdoor bouldering. Now that's my tip regarding preparing for an outdoor bouldering trip. For route climbing, the thing looks almost exactly the same, with one little difference. Again, you should, if you have the possibility and if the weather allows it, if your area allows it, get at least once a week for 1 month prior to the actual trip outdoors on rock. Getting back on the rope, lead climbing, you know, tackling the fear of falling again. That's often a very, very significant topic when people stay in the gym, like training like crazy for all winter, then they go out again, and then all of a sudden fear of falling comes back. Well, how could that happen? Fear of falling is something that's always there, and you have to work always for it to keep it as low as possible. The more you're climbing, the lower it gets. But if you're staying away from outdoor climbing for a long, long time, it creeps back in, man, and then you gotta work at it again. You gotta make that 1, 2 fall trainings to crash it down again, okay? So, that's my tip here. Sprinkle some outdoor lead climbing onto your training 1 month prior to the trip. And again, you know, outdoor climbing, especially in the harder grades, it happens a lot on very, very small holes and big distances, you know. So that's what you want to focus on when you want to hit the campus board, you know, to supplement this training and the hangboard, and also core exercises. They can be really, really important for outdoor route climbing as well, especially if there's a lot of overhangs. So here again, take a look at the area where you want to go to and try to adjust your training accordingly. So here, that's basically the same here for route climbing as for bouldering. And another thing is power endurance. Route climbing is mostly a power endurance stimulus, especially on your forearms and also on the rest of your body. So you can actually train power endurance very specifically in any gym. In the route climbing, in the lead climbing gym, just as well as in the bouldering gym. And in my personal opinion, you can even train it a little bit better in the bouldering gym, simply because in the route climbing gym you have to make a partner switch, you have very long rests all the time, maybe the route you need is already occupied by another team, you know. So in the bouldering gym you might as well have a 45er system wall, and this one you can tackle very, you know, in a very controlled manner, in a very precise manner with your stopwatch. So here you can really train power endurance very well, in my opinion. I made a video actually on how I did it back in the days. It's a really, really old video. You can check it out here as well. Hopefully it's gonna pop up there. But yeah, train power endurance, man. 1 to 2 times a week, probably 2 times every 2 weeks, or I mean 3 times every 2 weeks is the best thing to go here in the month prior to the trip. This is gonna dramatically reduce your acclimatization period. I've talked about the acclimatization period a lot recently because I figured it's one of the main factors why we don't have our full power instantly when we switch from the gym to rock, okay? So in my experience, if I don't do any of these things, if I'm just staying in the bouldering gym, training the hell out of my body, and then switching to route climbing outdoors on rock in the matter of a day or something, then I can wait like 2, 3, 4 weeks almost. I think it's roughly 4 weeks until I actually have access to all these supposed gains that I made, hopefully, back in the gym. So in order to keep this acclimatization period as short as possible, because you have to realize after 1 month, the trip is mostly already over for the majority of the people, all right? So you want to keep this acclimatization period short, like in the area of 1 to 2 weeks. This, by the way, depends also very much on the level. If you're a very beginner, your acclimatization period is going to be a lot shorter than of a guy who is already like bouldering 8B and projecting routes like 8C at the same time, okay? Switching from bouldering 8B specification to routes 8C is a bigger discrepancy here than switching from 6B route to 6A boulders or something. I hope that's clear. But what I want to say is, if you want to keep the acclimatization period very short, then you gotta throw in this power endurance training prior to the actual trip. And unfortunately, I'm always too lazy to do it, so I have to learn this lesson every time again the hard way. But if you have little time, then I can only recommend it. So that's basically what I have to say about preparation when it comes to training for a trip. Let's take a look at strategy. What can we do in terms of strategy to make the most of our trip? And here I would like to distinguish 3 different approaches, and these are actually all the same regardless whether we talk about route climbing or bouldering. The first approach is you don't really care. You just do what basically your rest day, climbing day pattern depends on the weather, you know, on the conditions. Also, you just want to have fun with your friends, you just want to enjoy the nature, you basically go out climbing to enjoy the scenery and stuff like that. You don't really care about sending stuff. So this is totally okay. Most people actually, I think, in my personal opinion, take climbing trips like these, you know, to have a holiday basically, okay? Just have fun, and that's completely okay, especially if you're a beginner. Get a lot of routes in simply, do a lot of rest days if you feel like it, you know, get that training in a little bit also as well, and recover as well. Don't forget to recover. So anyway, when let's say you're a little bit beyond that and you have a couple of projects in mind, you have a couple of targets, a couple of goals that you want to tick during this trip, all right? In this scenario, approach number 2 comes into play, which I call the shotgun approach. Now, what you want to do is, let's say you got 3 things that you desperately want to climb during this trip. So you go on day 1, you project number 1. On day 2, you project number 2. On day 3, you project number 3. And on day 4, you make a rest day. Now, what happens during this rest day is that you get your specific fatigue that you accumulated from all the 3 projects recovered in your body. So you get also at the same time a specific fitness for all these 3 projects. Now, you gotta think now, when you think about these three projects and the beta, which you hopefully already remembered in your brain, which one is the toughest of the 3? Which one I need the most freshness for? And this is what you're gonna do on day 5, all right? So let's say project number 2 was the toughest of the 3, then you start with project number 2 on day 5, day 6 is project number 1, let's say, and day 7 is project number 3. So this way you increase your chance of sending these things with each cycle that goes through, if you know what I'm saying. Ideally, after the 2nd cycle, you've sent all the 3 things. Most of the time that's not gonna happen, but in an ideal world that would be awesome, of course. But anyway, let's say, because you estimated it correctly, you've sent project number 2 on the day number 5. All right, because you said, oh, it's the toughest one, I need the most freshness. You were pretty fresh because you had a rest day before, you sent it. But you failed on project number 1 on day whatever and project number 3. So what you can do now is with these 2 remaining projects do the same thing, but this time in a 2 climbing day and 1 rest day pattern. You know what I'm saying? So then you try again, project number 1 on day 1 and project number 3 on day 2 rest day. And then this way you're focusing your effort down onto the projects that are remaining, you know, on the projects that are resisting. Now at some point you probably have climbed all the projects. So you may be asking yourself, okay, what if I have 6 projects that I want to climb during a trip? Now the problem is you can't really do 6 days in a row, 1 rest day, and then 6 days, 6 different projects in a row again, all right? Because this does not work in terms of beta memory as well. You can't really remember the beta of 6 different things perfectly. I mean, some people probably can, but in my experience that doesn't work too well. Also 6 days in a row and then 1 rest day, and again that's a pretty high chance that you're gonna burn out pretty freaking soon there, okay? So what you want to do in this case is you take the first 3 of these 6 projects, which you think are the easier ones, and do the same cycle that I've described before. And once they are done, take the second 3 projects and do the same cycle until they are done, which are the harder ones. This way you can use the easier ones to get used to the area you're going to, you know, get acclimatized to the rock, to the terrain and stuff, you know. So this is the shotgun approach, which applies to when you have a lot of projects that you want to get done and you want to increase your chances the most. Now, of course, this is everything only possible if the weather is super perfect all the time and if you have a super compliant climbing partner with whom you can do all this stuff, you know, who is always going with you to your projects. Obviously, that's not always the case, so you've got to improvise there if some of that stuff comes into play, you know. So the third approach that I want to show you here is the sniper approach, and this becomes relevant when you have only one single thing, one major project that you desperately want to get done during this trip. All right, What you simply do then is what you would do when the shotgun approach trimmed down your projects to one remaining resisting project, and that is 1 day on the project, 1 day off, rest day. 1 day on the project, 1 day off, rest day. 1 day on the project, 1 day off, rest day. Theoretically, this should yield the quickest possible send, if you can send it, you know, if you're fit enough, of this project. Now, the reason why we don't try the project on 2 consecutive days is because it is very, very rare that people send a project on the 2nd day in a row trying it. Because, again, you're accumulating specific fatigue in your muscles when you try a project for a day. Like, let's say you make 5 goes, checking out every move and stuff, you're gonna have muscle aches in all your body, depending on where the crux, you know, what the crux demands from your body. And you carrying the same fitness, the same fatigue to the crag on the next day directly and trying the same project again, it's probably not gonna work. Apart from maybe you've found a new beta or a new solution which is so much easier than what you've tried before. In this case, it can work out. But usually you want to make a rest day, get that specific fitness up again for your project and try it then on the next day straight away again. This way you're really focusing your efforts down to a route, and this probably yields the biggest chance for you to send it during the trip. Now, however, of course, I do very well understand this is a very boring approach, and if you're having a super huge popular, you know, holiday climbing trip area in front of you and just so to say wasting your time only into one single project, is of course a very hardcore approach, you know, and it's very dangerous that you burn out mentally by doing so. So I can only recommend this if it's really what you want to do. Also take a couple, maybe if you didn't send it after a week or after 2 weeks even, then you should take a bigger break and try something else. Also maybe make 2 rest days in a row, you know, to really get that fitness in. All these measures can help your mind to rest and maybe increase your chance of sending it later on. Of course, this is again only possible if you have enough time, if the trip lasts for long enough. And it's of course also very logical that the sniper approach is for routes which are really at your red point limit or at your boulder limit, you know. When you're focusing on something that's so much on your limit, then you're gonna have to invest these kind of resources. Whereas on the other hand, when you have a lot of different routes that you want to tackle with the shotgun approach, they should be a little bit below your limit, because if they are all super hard, then the shotgun approach might not be focused enough to send them. So these are all of the thoughts that go into this kind of planning with strategy and stuff. On top of that, you have to layer the whole conditions factor and the whole climbing partners factor and stuff like that, food, accommodation and all that kind of stuff. You know, you have to improvise a lot on climbing trips usually. But anyway, that's what I have to say in regards to strategy. So to summarize this here real quickly, how can we prepare for a rock climbing trip? In my opinion, get a lot of outdoor meters in, get used to your discipline again, get rid of that fear of falling, get used to clipping again, get used to pad placement and all that stuff, you know. That's why you should go outdoors in the month prior to the trip, at least if you have the option to do so. Things that can be done or have to be done indoors, of course, have to be done indoors, like campus board, hangboard and core. In these cases, go for the small holds, big distances, because that's what's outdoor climbing mostly about, not like futuristic jumps on volumes and stuff. That's what you rather not gonna need on the outdoors. And when it comes to strategy, you don't care, or you drive the shotgun approach if you have a little bit easier projects that you want to tackle, or you go for the sniper approach if you have one big thing that you want to climb. Alright, I think I've rambled long enough about this topic. I hope you've got something from this little talk. At least now you know all that I know and all the things that that influence my strategy, so to say, when it comes to my personal rock climbing trips that I did so far. Please post your opinions and experiences down below. Would be glad to hear them. Drop some likes if you got something from this video. And as always, guys, stay strong, keep crushing, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Bye.